want to be down here on this green line, please. Please. So again, here's what it did to the revenue back in 07, 08. Again, when we peaked, our general fund. I'm just talking about our general unrestricted funds. You know, we hit a peak of about $195 million, and then today, you know, we're slightly above $70 million. Next year we go down either way, and the reason why is because we're losing the charter school. So they come out of our funding. We'll talk about them momentarily, but that is a loss of about $10 million to the district either way. And we do lose some costs. Again, I've got a screen on that, and I'll talk about it. But you know, again, we didn't put in these two options show the option that the taxes pass. These are assumptions, because otherwise we'd be. Or this is the taxes passing. This blue line right here, and this red line would be if the taxes fail. So we would be down at below $150 million if the taxes fail. And just 4 or 5 years ago, we were above $195 million. So you know, where are we as a state? This is last year data, 10-11, and again, here's our median line. This is what the national average is for what states fund at their school. You could see basically up through Prop 13, the implementation of Prop 13, we were right around the median. So we were slightly above or slightly below the average. And then once Prop 13 kicked in, we started sort of this downward spiral. Now again, if you want to go back and you want to look at what the lottery did for us, the lottery blip is right here between these 2 years, because this is 1988, 89, and this is 1990. That's what the lottery did for us. It brought about $1 billion, a little over $1 billion, into our funding cycle. So it doesn't do you can just see it didn't do a whole lot for us. And then we came down, and then we came back up. And again, if you can't really read the years, but you can start seeing this upward growth. This is 96, 97, 97, 98, 98, 99, 99, 2000, 2001, and then 2000. See, we keep getting closer. Does anybody know basically why this occurred? The state of California? Why did we all of a sudden start getting closer to the national average? .com. You know, again, a majority of our tax base currently is based on the top 10%. And basically it's based off of capital gains. And capital gains are all either based off of sales of stocks and bonds or sales of property. And so this was the uptick in that, and basically making a lot of money in the .com, and then we basically crashed, and that's when we came down and we saw, you know, again, other states were continuing basically to, because we actually didn't see a deficit in these years. We may not have gotten a COLA, but we didn't see it. We didn't see that we got less funding, but other states were getting more funding is what was happening. But here we are in 10-11, so this is last year, so we're even further behind this year. It's even worse. But last year we were $2,850 below the national average. So, and then if you want to look at an educational measurement, because we're all about holding our schools accountable and looking at educational measurements, there's the National Assessment of Educational Performance, the NAEP, that is given to 4th, 8th, and 12th graders randomly. So every year we get a letter and saying the kids in this school are going to be randomly tested, and we have to go and test those kids. And then they take that data and they bring all the data for California together, and they compare California to other states around the nation. Well, what they found is in looking at this data, is that the top 5 performing states, Vermont, Rhode Island, Wyoming, and New Jersey and Maine were the top 5 performing states, and the bottom 5 performing states were California, Idaho, Mississippi, Nevada, and Arizona. And then they said, well, let's look at the funding differential between the top 5 performing and the bottom 5 performing. The top 5 performing states spend between $16,000 and $22,000 per pupil. That does include categorical, special ed, and so forth. And then the bottom 5 performing states where we are spend between $6,700 and $8,700. Again, that includes categoricals. When you add in our categoricals, you're, you know, $7,500 per child. So, you know, when people say funding doesn't matter, You know, maybe you could argue funding doesn't matter if you're talking $500. You know, maybe you could even argue with me $1,000. But when you're talking that we're $3,000 below the national average, and we are, you know, I mean, not even $3,000. You know, we are $9,000 below the bottom of the top performing states. Funding matters. Period. What we can do for our children is impacted by the amount of funds we get. So what does this really mean in real dollars and cents? Again, if we didn't have our deficit factor of $1,337, we would have another $43 million this year in our budget. Next year's budget, again, is not flat funded. We were supposed to get a 2.24% COLA. That is being that's being deficited. So even though if they say it's flat funding, again, by Prop 98, we should have been getting a COLA. We're not getting it. So really, we should be getting another $1,488 next year, which is creating a $48 million deficit for our school district. And lastly, if we were receiving what just the national average, don't even put me up to those top 5 school districts, because that's way too much money. I wouldn't know what to do with that. Just put me at the national average. And the national average would give our district $93 million more funding to improve the educational opportunities for our kids. Imagine what we could do with that. Imagine what we could do for our kids. You know, not only could we fairly compensate all of our employees, make sure that they all have good health benefits, but programmatically, you know, we could be doing significantly more. You know, just to give you an idea, K-3 class size reduction, to bring it back, would cost us $3.8 million. If I had $43 billion more, that'd be no problem. If I had $93 million more, you know, this is why I visited a friend back in Boston 2 summers ago, and his daughter was graduating valedictorian, and they were bemoaning the fact that, you know, that her school was, because he had a younger brother, and her school was no longer going to be able to offer AP French 5 because last year they only had 5 kids in it, and they were creating a mandate that you couldn't offer a class with smaller than 10 kids in it. I'm like going, really? Really? This is what we have to worry about? You know, and so we're the state of California. I don't know what the answer is, because people say that we're taxing at a high rate, you know, but what I know is other states have figured it out. Be it that they're taking 2 to 3% for property taxes, be it that their taxes are not heavily weighted on one portion of the population, whatever it is, be it that they're not spending as much money on prisons or other services, whatever it is, other states have figured out how to fund education at a level that make their children have great educational opportunities. The state of California has moved away from that vision, and we're no longer funding our educational opportunities for our kids. We're robbing our kids of their future. So, going back to us, again, at the beginning of the year we talked about having a large ending fund balance versus a mandated reserve. Mandated reserve is by law. We have over 30,000 kids in the school district. We have to have a 2% mandated reserve. If you're under 30,000 kids, you have to have a 3% mandated reserve. So as we decline in enrollment, when we someday go from 30,100 kids, and the next year we have 29,800 kids, we will have to increase our mandated reserve from 2% of our budget to 3% of our budget. That's just the way the law the law reads. But when you talk about your ending fund balance, there's multiple things that go into it. So I just want to go through the components. One is revolving cash. That's just all of the petty cash in the district. You know, the sites have petty cash. There's petty cash in the districts. So when you look at all of the petty cash, that's our revolving cash. Stores and inventory. Obviously, we have a warehouse that has reams of paper. It has, you know, other supplies. That's the value of what we have in our. It has books. That's the value of what's in there. Tier 3 categoricals. When the state back in 07, 08, when we hit this budget crisis, they gave us flexibility with some of our categoricals, if you remember. And that's what we call Tier 3 categoricals. They took all these categoricals and they moved it from the restricted side of the house to the unrestricted side of the house. And they said that you know, any funding left in those Tier 3 categoricals, you have to show as part of your ending fund balance.